Talking about all the best junglers and the junglers you can use to win games fast is great, but not if you build them incorrectly. In this video, we will be having a look at some of the best OP builds you are not building and perhaps you should be building in certain situations on 10 different junglers so you can best optimize your way to not only play as them, but play against them. And first up with her buffs, we have to talk about Gwen. We will get to Briar and both the types of builds, but first we have to talk about Gwen, because some junglers are going Rocket Belt, which is what you should be going as an almost default. In many scenarios, it is actually better. Now, what we all agree on is rushing Nash's Tooth. With this item, the synergy is insane. And of course, your healing is also insane. You get more from that than buying Leeching Leo, which is basically just a really weird item component. As such, your clearing gets faster, your skirmishing is better, your solo dragons and heralds are better, all with Nash's. The thing is, when people actually follow this up with Riftmaker, they don't realize the reduced healing you actually get because we all have AoE spells on Gwen. And as you all know, AoE healing is 1/3 of the healing on the item. And most notably, you're not getting that full impact anyway from the jungle because we're not looking to trade and fist the whole time. Which brings Rocket Belt into the fray because it still gives you that HP, you've got that penetration, you have that gap close active, which is great for skirmishes and yanks. The rule of thumb is you can use a Rocket Belt into your squishies and ranged comps, and then against those heavy melee comps where you really need to get down and dirty as the game goes on, then Riftmaker can give you a little bit more juice. But as junglers, you're gonna have way more success with the Rocket Belt in your build. The same way it's great on all AP junglers who love this item. And hey, don't forget, if you want help implementing this information into your own game, I have a free jungle improvement resource and a dedicated program where we have jungle video courses, jungle coaching VOD libraries, weekly coaching classes, Q&As, patch note rundowns, private high elo streams, as well as a private jungle Discord. And I know how to make junglers convert from low elo to gold to emerald to diamond to master plus. If you want to climb faster than anybody you know, jungle diff every game you play, head to virkayu.gg. And on that note, let's jump straight into Briar. And yes, I do have two completely different builds to show you how to play her. The first build on your screen now is the best 3-item sort of build. You can flex the final itemization quite heavily. You can even adapt the Sterix gauge in unique cases, but you do not need Blade of the Ruined King. This was covered very much on the gameplay channel where we covered the, at the time, rank 1 Briar on EU West or in the world at that point. Now everyone is kind of catching up in high elo and we have different philosophies kind of coming out. One of those variations does have a Spirit Visage with the Blade of the Ruined King if you wanted to go that tech, but I do recommend this sort of Stridebreaker, Black Cleaver, Sterix gauge. You do a lot of damage. You like to heal up. You have HP scaling in your kit. And the reason Stridebreaker is such an amazing rush item is not only does it allow you to stick to the more mobile people against you, but it gives you every one of the stats that she loves. HP, attack speed, AD, and of course haste. Her cooldowns are reasonably high, so that brings it down nicely. We want that W up as much as possible. We heal on our E with bonus HP, so that's great. Her bleed passive on healing is below 50% HP, and her W2 heals her, so having more HP is just good and strong. The AD scaling on our Q and W is obviously amazing. And when you have a passive that heals like a Warwick in this case, attack speed is always good because you're always lifestealing, you're always healing, you're always going. And when you have so much sustain and the ability to have a lot of damage and obviously chase people down with the berserk mechanic, you have a high damage on your E, huge healing charge. The issue for this kind of stuff is once you kind of W and then you Q in, you're going berserk, you can use your E to cancel. The thing is, you are now in the fight, yes? While E is a kind of disengage tool in itself, once you're in with Berserk, you're in. The same thing with your ultimate if you fly into bad situations. So if you build full squishy, you blow up. The way you want to play Briar is definitely this default way. It's the best way to play. It gives you healing, it gives you HP, it gives you all the damage you need, it gives you survivability. No one can kill you. You out-sustain and kill everyone. You are broken. That being said, we are seeing a Duskblade Collector build variation, which you'll see on your screen now, a few highlights of. What this does is amplify all of your AD ratios and AD scalings on your bleed passive, on your Q and on your W. And while everyone talks about the healing and the HP scaling and the AP scalings on that E and that R, you also have a significant bonus AD ratio. Not only that, when you actually get your special berserk mechanic using your ultimate, you get 20% AD bonus, plus lifesteal, yes? And of course, you also have AD scalings on your W, so building full AD with an armor shred on your Q, plus lethality that you have built into the atomization, and a pseudo mini execute on your W2 proc, the snack attack, as well as your collector, you're looking at something that's a little bit disgusting. Thing is, you have to now play like an assassin. You're making picks, you're positioning differently, you're flanking well, and you're not diving into a comp of 5 people and getting blown up. That's for Hecarim mains, you're a Briar mains, you think differently, you think blood, and you think hungry. Now obviously using that dash mechanic, the Prowler's Claw is good, the Axiomat can work as well. There's a subtle variation in how you want to build. I've just given the de facto build path on your screen now, the most used one by the players building this way. Obviously, you can have the collector if you want or not want. So all in all, I do recommend the first build for everybody to play. If you want to go more assassin, you can definitely do that. However, that comes with the caveat of your positioning has to be godlike. You have to truly know your damage profile and healing profile. But these are the two best ways to build her at the moment. Hopefully you all understand to W max into Q into E max and are having the best success as you keep learning this champion. The rune sets obviously change a little bit as well, but given how strong she is, you could kind of build whatever you wanted, I think. Now, you've heard of the Ghostblade Gore Drinker meta. You've heard of the Umbral Glaive Gore Drinker builds, which Talon and kind of Graves are doing at the moment as well. But what if instead of using those ridiculous lethality items, we combine the OP Gore Drinker with, say, an Essence Reaver or Kraken Slayer? The Silas main in the video I just released this week, who also plays Briar as well, has a really weird way of combining really cool items into insane results. He doesn't always replicate these things with huge sample sizes, but the games he uses these things absolutely pop off against challenger and professional junglers. That's because he understands the windows of where champions damage comes from and how to maximize that. In this game with the highlights, he went 17, 3, and 8 with 70% KP and did by far the most damage. By that I mean he did 30,000 damage, and the next highest in the entire game was almost 16,000 by the Caitlyn ADC on his team. That's a huge gap. He absolutely still rushes that Gore Drinker. We love the Phage, we like the Iron Spike Whip, we still love the Must Stomper. You think, hey, this is a standard Black Cleaver Starix Xin Zhao, we'll deal with him later. And then he builds Essence Reaver and you're like, okay. And then he goes into the Kraken Slayer and you're like, okay. So now he's got attack speed, crit, even more AD, bonus passes from those both items, as well as having the sustain of Gore Drinker. While the tank Fiddlesticks comes with a huge caveat, this Xin Zhao build is actually kind of smurf. It's the kind of thing that reminds me of Season 4 itemization, where you would go this on-hit attacking item called Furrow Flare, which is just infinitely stacking, a lot of attack speed, a lot of on-hit damage. You build Blade of the Rune King to go with it, and then you would just build full tank afterwards. While not exactly the same thing, it does carry over the same logic. Hey, these two damage items are all I need, and I'm gonna have the sustained fighter item and tanky itemization to finish it off. Now, he obviously wants to go Blade of the Rune King in this game to finish because he has such a big lead, but you could carry on with Black Cleaver and Starix Gauge to finish, or even a G8 I think is even better. And just as a very quick note, Diana can also then do the same kind of ideology. Yeah, so de facto has always been Rocket Belt when you go full assassin, and as that is the best way to play her in the game again, this is what we're building. However, you can still go Night Harvester to blow people up, especially when they're very frequently immobile champions and you can just do the extra damage and get the extra haste. However, I would still not recommend this as a default just because Rocket Belt makes the most sense, but as you can see from the graphic, we're talking about Riftmaker for Diana. Same kind of concept. Against a lot of melees, you want to go deep fighting and you need that sustain, even if it's at a fraction of what it should be. It'll still give you some good juice, and we're seeing some Dianas in Korea especially lean on this item. So like with Gwen, when the situation is correct, you can use this. Don't use it as a default and keep your Rocket Belt, but use the tools available to you. Not every time do you need to build the same boring items and lack any sort of effectiveness. Now, as we all know, Rengar and Kha'Zix are assassins. They like to build assassin items. However, with the absolute broken nature of Spear of Shojin and Gore Drinker, Gwen is obviously busting that out on the Kha'Zix. Yeah, it's a radically different way to play the game. You're still a frontliner, you slippery in, you slippery out. You always disrupt, you heal, you sustain, but you still kill people. Problem is you can't jump on a squishy target who has mobility and expect to one-shot them. Most Kha'Zix players are working on flanking, having good positioning, ensuring that they're able to unpack their load, get kills, get resets, and reposition, hitting the priority target. With this build, you can just jump in a 1v5, survive, disrupt, and play like a fighter effectively. And because Kha'Zix is that strong at the moment, the damage you have is more than enough to still do regular assassination attempts. Rengar is doing the same exact thing even Scrubnoob was going with Gore Drinker. A lot of people are testing this out on the champion because he kind of has synergy with that anyway. However, you don't always have to go Spear of Shojin. You can rush the Umbral into the Gore Drinker, that combo, go Shojin afterwards. Basically, it's really up to you how you want to build it. The idea is, though, that the meta builds can still be built on these two champions. Just understand that it radically changes the way you play the game, and understanding the different aspects of them is what makes these two champions so damn dynamic and fun to play, and not so fun to face. You know, like maxing W second instead of E in this case because you're not building full lethality and you want that added bonus from the W when you are an absolute beef cat cake. Now, the next thing I wanted to cover is a special main on the Korean server using tank Fiddlesticks. He does everything as you would normally do on the champion, nothing's weird about that. He goes first strike, obviously, with domination secondary. He just likes to build Even Shroud. Yes, even the nerfed Even Shroud, and then he'll go into things like Shadow Flame, maybe a Cosmic Drive, he still has Azonias, and of course the Abyssal Mask. What this does is it kind of says, hey, I know I'm going to go into these fights as a more aggressive style engage versus how Fiddles usually play, which is an assassin playstyle. And because I'm lacking the raw damage components from what I'm building in terms of mythics, I'm going to go with things that give damage amp. So I get tankier, but then I get to amplify my damage a little bit while surviving a bit more. He's hedging a bit of damage for a lot more survivability. Even Fiddle wants to heal up with a final proc of the W, as well as also having bonus damage based upon missing HP. You can kind of see where this floats. However, while this is strong in the right hands, it kind of has the same caveat as a lot of these kinds of builds. Yeah, you can call them OP, yeah, you can call them S+, but do you play them in a way that allows it to be so? If you play this like a Rockabout regular Fiddlesticks, you're not gonna have fun. If you're building this like a Ludens or Leandris Fiddlesticks, you're not gonna have fun. Those all have different subtle variations in their playstyle, much like this one does. Is it giga effective and more so than the other builds? No, categorically. But if you play properly, can you succeed? Yes, 100%. And as I mentioned earlier, the Umbral Glaive Gore Drink attack and maybe Talon and Graves, yeah. So Graves is doing that for sure. Talon has an alternative. It's the Gore Drinker Prowler's Black Cleaver build. So you like damage, but you still kill people, and now you can jump in and get out. Talon's issue has always been he goes in, and he doesn't always come out. You can go Duskblade and Axiomark like everybody else, but if the enemy team does some heavy CCing, you're gonna blow up and die. This way you don't have your ult up every second, but you don't get blown up. You still kill people, and trust me, I've faced it a few times, even as squishy champions with a lot of damage, and you just can't kill him. He just sustains and he still kills you. The champion is the most obnoxious thing in the game when Gore Drink is built on everyone. That's the problem with the mythics. Assassins can build fighter items when they're broken, and fighters can build assassin items when they're broken. They intermingle all of them, and you get these abominations that dominate the meta in the most unhealthy ways. I cannot wait for it to be gone, but until then, if you play Talon, this is a build you can go in the jungle. I don't recommend it by default, but I do say if you're something that wants to one-trick and just win against the Jarvans, the Hectorims, the Kha'Zixes, other assassins that can blow you up, this is the build to go. Spread your disease, my friend. Talking about spreading a little bit disease in terms of the AP variety, we have Taliyah. Now, Crown has been buffed. They gave us a bit more AP and they decided, hey, we're gonna take away some of that passive and make it a bit more, over time, but less damage reduction. This is great against the extended fighters that we're seeing all the time now. So if you're against a really heavy melee comp and you know they're gonna go in on you, then go Crown. This allows you to disengage and survive with that passive, and now because you've disengaged with your WE combo, they can't escape, you can kill them off with some rocks. Her AP scalings have always been absolutely insane, which is why you see such very heavy death cap focused builds in the past. With that scaling, you're adding a bit more AP from the Crown passive. Yeah, you lose some damage in terms of any sort of mythic passive from there, but the 40% damage reduction over 2.5 seconds allows you to actually disengage an engager and still have enough damage to kill them. Remember, you're still going to want to go your Leandries and things like that against regular comps. This is really when you have a very heavy melee all-in comp and you just want to survive because you have the disengage tools, you have the ability to stun them in place, and you still have copious amounts of damage, you scale more than an Anaconda, and you can take over games regardless. And finally in this video, a really juicy build for all of you. We all know that we can go Trinity Force Black Cleaver Deadman Skarner. While this is radically different to the Black Cleaver focus builds that I covered in a previous edition of this video, this champion is really great against the meta. Yeah, he has his weaknesses, but he honestly doesn't really drastically need a rework in terms of gameplay. He has the mechanics necessary to thrive against most meta champions. They build a lot of HP and he does percentage max HP, and then they move a lot and he stuns a lot. You kind of see where we're going with this. He gets resets on his Q. Trinity Force has allowed him to do that for decades, what it feels like, because he always used to build that. Sheen is goated on this champion. But then you think about it and you're like, well, he gets resets on his Q basically. What if I could help all other basic abilities be up more often? Which would equal more stuns, which would equal more engages, which would equal more wins. So you can go Shojin, Jack Show, and then Stoneplate. This allows you not only to abuse the absolute busted item that is Spear of Shojin, it gives you the Drain Tankage from Jack Show, and then it gives you the Stoneplate for the Giga Survivability. So you can choose your DPS, Hyper Carry Focus build with the first option, or you can build your Tank Engage Super Rotational Demon Scorpion thing with the second. But all I have to say is, all these builds work in high elo and above. All of these builds have proven effective. All of these builds have data to back them, and they can definitely work if you execute them correctly. Even if they're not necessarily the best, they're OP in the right scenario. And I figured out a new way to implement this information into your jungle strategy so you can climb while doing less. And when we can climb while being lazy, I think most of us would think that's a good thing. So, video on your screen right now.